Lindsay Clancy has been hospitalized because she tried to take her own life after the killings.
An emotional day in court for Lindsay Clancy. She's the mom who claims she was suffering from postpartum psychosis.
So some children came in early at 8, and then the rest of the kids came in at 9:15.
The morning of January 24th, 2023, Lindsay Clancy took her 5-year-old daughter to the pediatrician. Then she came home and built a snowman in the backyard with her children. Then she called a restaurant to order takeout for the family dinner. Then she texted her husband Patrick throughout the day in what he would later describe on the stand at her murder trial as an ordinary, warm, connected day. When prosecutors asked him directly whether his wife had been having suicidal thoughts that day, Patrick Clancy paused, and then he said she was having one of her best days. That evening, she asked Patrick to go pick up the food she had ordered. He got in the car. He was gone for roughly 30 minutes. When he came home, his 3 children, Cora, 5, Dawson, 3, and Callan, 8 months, were dead. Lindsay was found outside on the ground, having jumped from a second-floor window. She is now paralyzed from that fall. She attends her own murder trial in a wheelchair. And the central question her trial is asking, the question that has divided the medical community, legal scholars, and the millions of people following this case, is whether the woman who built a snowman with her children that morning and ordered takeout for dinner that night had any meaningful control over what she did that evening. Lindsay Clancy grew up in Connecticut and built the kind of life that looks, from the outside, like the one you were supposed to want. She trained as a nurse and worked as a labor and delivery nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, one of the most prestigious medical institutions in the country. She worked in the unit where women gave birth. She spent her professional life supporting new mothers through one of the most physically and emotionally demanding experiences a human being can have. She had, by the accounts of everyone who worked with her, a genuine gift for it. Labor and delivery nursing is among the most demanding specialties in the profession. It requires the ability to function competently in high-stakes situations, to read a patient's emotional state quickly, and to provide steady, calm support during experiences that are simultaneously medical and deeply personal. Lindsay Clancy was, by documented accounts, good at all of those things. She understood what new mothers go through. She had spent years in professional proximity to it. That detail matters when you consider what came next. She married Patrick Clancy, who by every public account was an attentive, devoted husband and father. They settled in Duxbury, a small seaside town about 30 miles south of Boston, the kind of place where people move when they want space and good schools and a slower pace. They had 3 children in quick succession. Cora was born in 2017, Dawson in 2019, Callan their third, in May 2022. Callan's birth is the beginning of the documented medical timeline that the trial is now built around. In the months after Callan was born, Lindsay Clancy began deteriorating. Not slowly, not ambiguously, but in ways she was reporting to doctors, that doctors were logging in medical records, that her husband was witnessing in their home, and that a succession of psychiatric providers were attempting to address with an escalating series of medications that would, by January 2023, total 13 different drugs from multiple different prescribers. She had no known history of serious psychiatric illness before Callan's birth. She was 32 years old. She was, by the accounts of people who knew her, an excellent nurse, a devoted mother, and a grounded and capable person. What happened to her between May 2022 and January 2023 is the story this trial is about. The timeline of Lindsay Clancy's deterioration, reconstructed from court records and the Boston Globe's review of medical documentation, is one of the most detailed pictures of postpartum psychiatric collapse that has ever been examined in a public criminal proceeding. It begins almost immediately after Callan's birth in May 2022 and accelerates with a speed that the defense argues should have been recognizable and wasn't. By September 2022, she was reporting anxiety severe enough to seek psychiatric help. She was prescribed Zoloft, a standard antidepressant, first line for anxiety and depression. Within weeks, her symptoms had not stabilized. More medications followed. Over the next 4 months, across multiple providers who were not in consistent communication with each other, she was prescribed an escalating series of psychiatric drugs: antidepressants, antipsychotics, benzodiazepines, sedatives, mood stabilizers. The final tally, as presented in court by her defense attorney Kevin Reddington, was 13 different psychiatric medications between October 2022 and January 2023. More than 30 separate prescriptions in that period. At various points, she was on Seroquel, an antipsychotic typically used for bipolar disorder, at a dose of 400 milligrams per day. Valium for anxiety, Lamictal, a mood stabilizer, Trazodone for sleep, amitriptyline, a tricyclic antidepressant, was added as recently as January 16th, just 8 days before the deaths. The defense's argument about this medication history is precise. No single provider had a complete picture of what she was taking. Multiple prescribers were operating independently. The drugs interacted with each other in ways that may have destabilized her brain chemistry rather than addressing it. And the underlying condition that the defense argues was driving her deterioration, a combination of undiagnosed bipolar disorder and postpartum psychosis, was never correctly identified by any of the providers who treated her. She was told at one evaluation in December 2022 that she did not have postpartum depression. No provider formally diagnosed postpartum psychosis. At the end of December 2022, Lindsay Clancy told Patrick she was having suicidal thoughts. She told him she was having thoughts of hurting the children. She contacted her psychiatrist. On January 1st, 2023, she voluntarily admitted herself to McLean Hospital, one of the most respected psychiatric facilities in the United States. Affiliated with Harvard Medical School, she was there for 5 days. She was discharged on January 5th with no indication, according to prosecutors, that she posed a danger to herself or others. She went home. She had a husband, 3 children under the age of 6, and 13 medications from multiple providers who were not coordinating her care. The McLean discharge is one of the most disputed single events in the entire case. McLean Hospital is not a community clinic. It is a world-renowned psychiatric institution. Its staff discharged a woman who had voluntarily admitted herself because she was afraid she might harm her children and herself, and they sent her home 5 days later. The defense argues that discharge reflected a systemic failure to recognize the severity and specific character of her condition. The prosecution argues the discharge reflected what her condition actually was: manageable, not dangerous, and not the psychotic break the defense now describes. 3 weeks after that discharge, Callan, Dawson, and Cora were dead. January 24th, 2023. The day begins, by every account, like an ordinary January day in a family home. Patrick is working in the basement. Lindsay is upstairs with the children. He comes up only once or twice. The text messages between them are warm and normal. She takes Cora to the pediatrician. She builds a snowman. She orders dinner from a restaurant. Patrick testifies that he saw nothing that alarmed him. He says it felt like one of her better days, in a period when good days had been hard to find. At some point that evening, Lindsay Clancy brought her children to the basement. According to prosecutors, she used exercise resistance bands to strangle Cora, Dawson, and Callan. She then jumped from a second-floor window of the house. Patrick, returning from the errand run she had asked him to make, called 911. When first responders arrived, they found the children. The 911 call, played for the jury, captures Patrick's voice in those first moments, describing what he found. The gallery in the courtroom was silent when it was played. Patrick Clancy on the stand had to stop, Lindsay was found outside on the ground. She had severed her spinal cord in the fall. She was taken to a trauma center. The children were taken to the hospital, where they were pronounced dead. Patrick Clancy, in a statement released 4 days after the deaths, said, "I wasn't married to a monster. I was married to someone who got sick." He has not wavered from that position. He told The New Yorker in 2024 that their marriage grew stronger as her condition worsened, and that he felt persistently lucky to have her in his life. He is the prosecution's first witness at her murder trial. He is expected to support the picture of a woman whose deterioration was visible, documented, and not adequately treated. Before we get to what both sides are actually arguing in court, and to the medical and legal question at the heart of this trial, I want to take 5 seconds. A case where the central question is about the limits of mental illness as a legal defense, and about what the healthcare system owes people in psychiatric crisis, is exactly what this channel covers. Subscribing helps. 2 seconds, now. What postpartum psychosis actually is, because the trial depends on it. Postpartum psychosis is the most severe form of postpartum psychiatric illness. It is rare, affecting approximately 1 to 2 in every 1,000 new mothers. But it is recognized by every major psychiatric body in the world as a genuine, acute medical emergency. It typically emerges within the first 2 weeks after birth, though it can appear up to 6 weeks postpartum. Symptoms include hallucinations, delusions, paranoia, disorganized thinking, mania, and a rapid deterioration in the ability to distinguish what is real from what is not. Women with postpartum psychosis can be convinced with complete subjective certainty of things that are not true, and can act on those convictions without any awareness that they are acting from a place of illness rather than from reality. Research establishes that approximately half of all postpartum psychosis cases occur in women with a prior history of bipolar disorder. Lindsay Clancy had no formal prior diagnosis of bipolar disorder at the time of Callan's birth. Her defense argues she had it, undiagnosed, and that the postpartum period triggered a catastrophic episode that her treatment providers, overwhelmed and uncoordinated, did not recognize in time to stop. The defense also argues critically that she was experiencing command hallucinations, a voice instructing her to kill her children and then herself, and that at the moment she acted, she was not capable of understanding that the instructions she was following were products of a disintegrating mind rather than a reflection of reality. Here is the sharpest version of what the two sides are actually arguing. The prosecution's position, as stated by prosecutor Jennifer Sprague in opening statements, is that Lindsay Clancy planned the murders, that she sent her husband on the errand deliberately to create a window of time alone with the children, that she was never on more than 4 or 5 medications at a time, that she took those medications as prescribed, that she was not in the grip of a disabling psychosis. She was a woman who had expressed thoughts of harming the children, who had been given repeated opportunities to get help and had done so, and who then, on the evening of January 24th, made a choice. Sprague told the jury, "The defense will tell you the medications destroyed her. The evidence will show something different." The defense's position, as stated by Kevin Reddington, is the inverse. He walked the jury through the 13 medications. He named the providers. He described a system in which multiple doctors were prescribing for overlapping symptoms without a shared understanding of the patient's full clinical picture, what he called polypharmacy. The simultaneous use of multiple drugs whose combined effect on a single patient's brain chemistry was never adequately monitored. He argued that the underlying bipolar disorder and postpartum psychosis that were driving her deterioration were never diagnosed, that the medications prescribed were, in some cases, contraindicated for someone with her actual condition, and that a woman who voluntarily admitted herself to McLean Hospital because she was afraid of what she might do, who asked for help repeatedly and was discharged, did everything the system told her to do and the system failed her. The open loop that has run through this entire story. Why didn't anyone stop this? Given how much was documented and how many providers were involved, closes, at least partially, with that framing. The answer the defense offers is, because the system was fragmented, the handoffs were incomplete, and no single provider was ever looking at the whole picture. Lindsay Clancy and her ex-husband Patrick have both filed civil suits against her medical providers. Those suits are separate from the criminal trial. They allege negligence, misdiagnosis, and a collective failure to respond to warning signs that were present in the record and were not acted on in time. The most unusual aspect of this trial, the aspect that has stopped even experienced legal observers, is Patrick Clancy. In most murder trials involving a spouse or partner, the surviving adult member of the household is a hostile witness, or a grief-stricken one, or someone whose testimony is shaped by the desire for accountability. Patrick Clancy is none of those things. He testified at his wife's murder trial as someone who forgives her. He said from the stand that their marriage was wonderful. He said he felt lucky to have had her in his life. He said he did not believe he was married to a monster. He said he believed she was sick. He did not say this once in a statement drafted by lawyers. He has said it repeatedly, publicly, over 2.5 years, and he repeated it under oath in front of the jury that will decide whether his wife spends her life in prison. Under cross-examination by the prosecution, Patrick acknowledged that Lindsay had told him in the final weeks of December 2022 that she was having thoughts of hurting the children. He acknowledged that he had continued to leave her alone with them. He acknowledged the ski trip on January 16th, 8 days before the deaths, where he left with 5-year-old Cora while Lindsay stayed home with the 2 younger children. He said he felt comfortable doing that because she had told him those thoughts had passed. He believed her. The prosecution's implication was clear. If a parent is told that their spouse has expressed thoughts of harming their children, there is a question about what precautions follow. Patrick Clancy is a prosecution witness whose testimony is consistently more useful to the defense. Lindsay Clancy attends the trial in a wheelchair. She has limited mobility as a result of the spinal cord injury from the fall. She has been seen in courtroom footage, wiping tears as the details of her children's deaths are read into the record. Whether that visible grief is relevant to the jury's assessment of her mental state, whether it confirms someone who understands the magnitude of what happened, or someone who cannot reconcile what she did with who she believes herself to be, is the kind of question that insanity defense cases always generate and never fully answer. In Massachusetts, the legal standard for criminal insanity requires that a defendant, due to mental illness, either did not appreciate the nature of their act or did not appreciate that what they were doing was wrong. The jury must decide which of those conditions, if either, applied to Lindsay Clancy in the 30 minutes she was alone with her children on January 24th, 2023. That is a question not about what she did, which is not in dispute, but about what, at that precise moment, she was able to understand about what she was doing. Go back to that sentence. She was having one of her best days. Patrick Clancy said that on the stand. He was responding to a question about whether Lindsay had been having suicidal thoughts on January 24th. And the full context of that sentence, which is essentially the full context of this entire case, is this. It was possible for a woman who had been prescribed 13 psychiatric medications across 4 months, who had been hospitalized for suicidal ideation less than 3 weeks earlier, who had told her husband she was having thoughts of harming her children, to have a good day. A day of snowmen and pediatrician appointments and takeout orders. And then, within the span of 30 minutes, to do the most catastrophic thing it is possible to do. The prosecution's reading of that sentence is, she was functional. She was in control. She planned this. The defense's reading is, She was not having a good day in any clinically meaningful sense. She was experiencing a psychotic episode that, from the inside, can feel like clarity. People experiencing psychosis do not typically feel chaotic. They feel certain. They feel purposeful. They feel as though they are acting with complete understanding. The horror of postpartum psychosis, as psychiatric literature documents it, is that the woman in its grip is not aware that she is ill. She is following instructions that feel completely real. Whether Lindsay Clancy was in that state on the evening of January 24th, 2023, is the question a Massachusetts jury is currently deciding. Cora Clancy was 5 years old. She had gone skiing with her father 8 days before she died. Dawson was 3. Callan was 8 months old, not yet a year, not yet a first birthday, not yet anything except a baby his parents had named and brought home in May. Patrick Clancy described his children in testimony that caused the courtroom to go quiet. He spoke about who they were. He spoke about what they were becoming. He spoke about them the way parents speak about children who were loved completely and specifically and without reservation. They were loved. They are gone. The trial that will determine what that means legally is ongoing. If this case touches you, if you are a new parent or a parent who has struggled, or someone who has watched a person you love deteriorate faster than the healthcare system moved. Postpartum Support International maintains a helpline, 1-800-944-4773. They work specifically with postpartum mental illness. If this case is why you watch this channel, because the questions it raises about mental illness, about the legal system, about what we owe each other, subscribe. The verdict in this case will be one of the most consequential decisions a jury makes in 2026. When it comes in, this channel will cover it, and the verdict, whatever it is, will not be the last word on what this case means. This touches on child loss and severe mental illness. If any of this is hitting close to home for you personally, I'm here to talk. And Postpartum Support International's helpline above is a good resource too.